Sir, I called because you said you might have a job for me, Ekenna said, his voice growing tense. There was a brief silence before Mr. Osita responded, his tone still calm, with a hint of something darker. I'm sorry, Ekenna, but I don't have any job for you. What I really want is your wife. In the city of Asaba, there lived a young couple named Ozioma and Ekenna. Their love was strong, simple and pure, and it showed in everything they did. Ozioma was a gentle and kind woman with a bright smile that made people feel happy. She wasn't rich, but she had a small POS stand in the market square. Every day, people would come to her stand to withdraw money or pay bills. She didn't make much money from the business, but she was content with what she had. Ozioma was hardworking and always found a way to make the best of any situation. She was thankful for the little she earned and used it wisely. Ekenna, her husband, was a tall man with a big heart. He had finished his studies and was a graduate, but finding a job was hard. Every morning, Ekenna would dress in his best clothes and head out to look for work. He would travel far and wide, going from office to office, from company to company, hoping someone would give him a chance. But every day, he came back home with no job and no money, only the hope that things would be better tomorrow. Even though he struggled to find work, Ekenna's love for Ozioma never changed. He loved her deeply and always wanted to make her happy. Whenever he could, Ekenna would bring Ozioma small gifts, a flower he picked by the roadside, or a sweet fruit he found on his way back home. These small gestures made Ozioma smile, and she cherished them more than anything else. Though they live in a small house in Asaba, but it was filled with love and warmth. In the evenings, after the day's work was done, Ozioma and Ekenna would sit outside their home, watching the sun set behind the hills. They would talk about their dreams, about the life they wanted to build together. Ozioma, I know things are hard right now, Ekenna would say, holding her hand, but I promise, I will find a job soon. I want to take care of you and give you the life you deserve. Ozioma would smile and lean her head on his shoulder. Ekenna, as long as we have each other, I am happy. We will face whatever comes together. I believe in you. One day, things will get better. Their love was strong, and everyone in the village could see it. But love alone wasn't enough to protect them from the challenges they would face, especially when it came to Ozioma's family. Before Ozioma and Ekenna were married, they had to face many challenges, especially from Ozioma's family. Ozioma's parents were well known in the village. They were respected and proud people, and they had high hopes for their daughter. They believed she deserved to marry a rich man who could take care of her. When they found out that Ozioma wanted to marry Ekenna, they were very angry. Ozioma's parents never liked Ekenna. From the moment they heard his name, they decided he wasn't good enough for their daughter. They didn't care about his kind heart or how much he loved Ozioma. All they saw was that he was poor with no job, and they didn't want him in their family. One day, Ozioma's parents called her into their house to talk to her about Ekenna. They were sitting in the living room, looking very serious. Ozioma, her father began, we have had enough about this Ekenna. You are our only daughter, and we want the best for you. Ekenna is not the right man for you. He has no money. no job, and no future. How will he take care of you? Ozioma stood quietly, listening to her father. She loved her parents, but she also loved Ekenna, and she couldn't imagine her life without him. Papa, I understand your concerns, Ozioma replied calmly, but I love Ekenna, and he loves me too. He may not have much now, but he's a good man, and he's trying his best. I believe in him. Her mother sighed, shaking her head. Love is not enough, Ozioma. How will love pay the bills? How will love put food on the table? You deserve better. There are many men in this community and even in the city who would give you a good life. Men who have jobs, money, and can take care of you. Why would you choose someone like Ekenna? Ozioma felt a lump in her throat, but she stood her ground. She knew her parents were only thinking about her future, but they didn't understand how much she loved Ekenna. They didn't see the kind loving man she knew. Papa, Mama, I appreciate everything you have done for me, Ozioma said, her voice trembling slightly. But I love Ekenna and I want to be with him. I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready to face whatever comes our way. Please try to understand. Her parents looked at each other, their faces hard and unyielding. They had already made up their minds, and they didn't want to listen to Ozioma. If you marry Ekenna, her father said sternly, you will do so without our blessings. We will not support you, and you will be on your own. Ozioma felt tears well up in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She knew how serious her parents were, and the thought of being cut off from her family was frightening. But the thought of losing Ekenna was even more painful. Then I will go, Papa, Ozioma said quietly, her voice steady despite the fear she felt inside. I will marry Ekenna, even if it means leaving everything behind. I cannot live without him. Her parents were shocked by her words, but they could see the determination in her eyes. They knew Ozioma was serious, and once she made up her mind, there was no changing it. The days that followed were filled with tension and argument. Ozioma's parents tried everything they could to change her mind. They even called relatives and friends to talk to her, hoping someone could convince her to leave Ekenna. But Ozioma remained firm. She loved Ekenna, and she was willing to fight for their love no matter what. Meanwhile, Ekenna didn't know how much Ozioma was struggling with her family. He knew they didn't approve of him, but he didn't realize how deep their dislike was. All he knew was that he loved Ozioma and wanted to make her happy. One evening, after a long day of looking for work, Ekenna came visiting Ozioma. She looked sad, and he could tell something was bothering her. My love, what's wrong? Ekenna gently asked, taking her hand. Ozioma looked down, trying to find the right words. Ekenna, my parents, they don't want us together. They don't think you are good enough for me because you don't have a job or money. They are trying to make me leave you. Ekenna's heart sank. He had always feared this moment would come. He didn't want Ozioma to suffer because of him. Ozioma, maybe they are right, Ekenna said, his voice filled with sadness. Maybe you deserve someone better. I don't want you to lose your family because of me. Ozioma looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. Don't say that, Ekenna. I love you and I want to be with you. I don't care what they say. We will make it through this together. I'm not giving up on us. Ekenna felt a surge of emotion as he looked at the woman he loved. He knew how much she was sacrificing for him, and it only made him love her more. He promised himself that he would do everything in his power to find a job and make a good life for her, no matter how long it took. And so, despite the challenges, Ozioma and Ekenna continued to fight for their love. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they were determined to walk it together, hand in hand, with hearts full of hope and love. Ekenna felt a surge of emotion as he looked at the woman he loved. Ozioma stood before him, her eyes filled with warmth and love, and he couldn't help but feel blessed to have her by his side. He knew how much she was sacrificing for him, and it only made him love her more. Ozioma, Ekenna said softly, taking her hands in his, I promise you, I will do everything in my power to find a job and make a good life for us, no matter how long it takes. I won't give up. Ozioma smiled, her heart swelling with love for her husband. I know you will, Ekenna. I believe in you. And so, they got married without their parents' blessings. The wedding was simple, with only a few close friends in attendance. There were no elaborate decorations or fancy clothes, but none of that mattered to them. They were happy just to be together, knowing that their love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. After the wedding, life continued as usual. Ozioma continued running her small POS business at the market. Every morning, she woke up early, prepared breakfast for Ekenna, and then headed out to her stand. The money she made wasn't much, but it was enough to keep them going. Ekenna, on the other hand, spent his days searching for a job. He would leave the house early in the morning, dressed in his best clothes, and walk around the city, going from one office to another. Each time, he would fill out an application, attend an interview, and hope for the best. But the answers were always the same. I'm sorry, we don't have any openings at the moment. We will keep in touch with you in case something comes up. Despite the rejections, Ekenna didn't lose hope. He knew he had to keep trying, not just for himself, but for Ozioma. He wanted to give her the life she deserved, a life filled with comfort and security. Every time he returned home empty handed, Ozioma was there to greet him with a smile. It's okay, Ekenna, she would say, hugging him tightly. I know you are doing your best. Something good will come our way very soon. I'm sure of it. Her words gave Ekenna the strength to keep going. No matter how much times he was turned down, he refused to give up. He was determined to find a job, no matter how long it took. That same evening, after dinner, Ozioma and Ekenna decided to take a walk around their neighborhood. The air was cool and the stars twinkled in the sky above them. As they strolled down the street, hand in hand, they laughed and talked about their day. Do you remember the time I tried to cook jollof rice for the first time? Ozioma asked, giggling at the memory. Ekenna chuckled. How could I forget? The rice was so burnt. It was almost black. They both burst into laughter, enjoying the moment. It was time like this that made all their struggles worthwhile. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and that was all that mattered. As they continued walking, a car slowly approached them. The car stopped right beside them, and the window rolled down. A man in his mid-40s, with a friendly smile, leaned out. Good evening. The man greeted them. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm looking for a particular street. I seem to have lost my way. Ekenna stepped forward, always ready to help. Good evening, sir. Which street are you looking for? The man glanced at a piece of paper in his hand. I'm looking for Omaro Street. Ekenna smiled. You are not far off. Just continue straight down this road. Take the second left and you'll find Omaro Street. The man nodded, his smile widening. Thank you so much. I have been driving around for a while and I was starting to worry. As the man prepared to drive off, he suddenly turned his gaze to Ozioma. He looked at her up and down, his eyes lingering on her for a moment too long. Then with a sly smile he said, "You are very beautiful." Ekenna stiffened, feeling a bit uncomfortable with the way the man was staring at Ozioma. But before he could say anything, the man continued. "Such beauty," the man said, still looking at Ozioma. Ozioma felt uneasy under the man's gaze, but she forced a polite smile. "This is my husband standing beside me here." Ekenna, sensing Ozioma's discomfort, gently squeezed her hand. "We should be heading home now," he said firmly, giving the man a nod. The man finally looked away from Ozioma and back at Ekenna. Of course, of course. Thank you again for the directions. Have a good evening." With that, the man rolled up his window and drove away, leaving Ozioma and Ekenna standing there. They watched the car disappear down the road before they continued their walk. But the mood had changed. Ekenna couldn't shake off the strange feeling he had. The way the man had looked at Ozioma didn't sit well with him. He knew it was common for men to appreciate a woman's beauty, but there was something about the way this man had done it that made him uneasy. "Ozioma," Ekenna said softly, breaking the silence, "are you okay?" Ozioma nodded, though she didn't look entirely comfortable. "I'm fine, my love. It's just that man's stare was a bit strange. I noticed it too," Ekenna replied, "but don't worry, I won't let anything happen to you." Ozioma smiled, feeling reassured by Ekenna's words. "I know, Ekenna. Let's just go home." They continued their walk back home. All the joy and laughter from earlier were gone. Both of them were deep in thought, wondering about the man they had just encountered and why his gaze had felt so unsettling. When they finally reached their house, Ekenna locked the door securely behind them. Ozioma went to prepare their bed, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that still lingered in her mind. As they lay down to sleep, Ekenna held Ozioma close, his arm wrapped protectively around her. "Everything will be okay, my love," Ekenna whispered, kissing her forehead. "We'll be fine." Ozioma nodded, closing her eyes as she rested her head on his chest. "I know, Ekenna. I trust you." But as they drifted off to sleep, neither of them could completely shake off the strange encounter with the man in the car. Little did they know that this was just the beginning of a new challenge in their lives. The next morning, Ekenna left the house early, ready to continue his job hunt. He had been searching for months, and the days seemed to blur together with endless applications and interviews. His spirits were high as he set out, determined that today might be the day he found a job. As he walked down the street towards the bus stop, Ekenna thought about how he could improve his skills, or maybe even start a small business if he couldn't find a job. He was so focused on his thoughts that he barely noticed the cars passing by. Suddenly, a car pulled up right in front of him. Ekenna was surprised to see it was the same man he had met the evening before. The car window rolled down, and Mr. Osita leaned out with a smile. "Good morning," Mr. Osita called out. "It's a pleasure to see you again." Ekenna stopped, feeling a bit confused. "Good morning, sir. It's nice to see you too." Mr. Osita waved a hand dismissively. "I didn't get a chance to introduce myself properly yesterday. My name is Osita." Ekenna nodded, still trying to understand why Mr. Osita was stopping. "Yes, I remember. You are looking for a street." Mr. Osita smiled and reached into the car to pull out a business card. "Here is my business card. You look like you need a job. Well, if you do need a job, please contact me. I might have an opportunity for you." Ekenna took the card, feeling a mix of hope and uncertainty. The card had Mr. Osita's name and the name of his company printed neatly on it. Ekenna glanced at the card, then looked up at Mr. Osita. Thank you very much, sir, Ekenna said. I will definitely think about it. Mr. Osita nodded and gave a friendly wave. Great. I hope to hear from you soon. Have a good day. With that, Mr. Osita drove off, leaving Ekenna standing there with the card in his hand. Ekenna looked at the card again, his mind racing. This could be the opportunity he had been waiting for. When Ekenna returned home later, he was eager to share the news with Ozioma. As he walked through the door, he found her in the kitchen preparing dinner. Honey, you won't believe what happened today, Ekenna said, his face bright with excitement. I ran into Mr. Osita again. Ozioma looked up from the stove, her eyes curious. Oh, the man from yesterday. What happened? Ekenna pulled out the business card and showed it to her. He gave me this card and offered to help me find a job. He said he might have an opportunity for me. Ozioma took the card and studied it. She noticed the name of the company and phone number written neatly. Her face fell slightly, and she set the card down on the kitchen counter. I don't feel good about this, Ekenna, she said quietly. I mean, he was so forward with me yesterday. It made me uncomfortable. Ekenna's smile faded. He could see that Ozioma was worried. I understand how you feel, but this could be a chance for us. We really need the money, and I want to provide a better life for you. I'm willing to take this chance. Ozioma shook her head. I know you want to help us, but I just have a bad feeling about Mr. Osita. I don't want you to work for someone who might make us uncomfortable or put us in a difficult situation. Ekenna sighed, feeling frustrated but trying to stay calm. Ozioma, I really need this job. We have been struggling for so long, and I want to be able to give you the life you deserve. Please, just let me try. If it doesn't work out, we can think of something else. Ozioma's eyes filled with concern, and she looked at her husband. I don't want you to put yourself in a bad situation, Ekenna. We have managed so far, and I'm sure we can keep going until something better comes along. Ekenna took a deep breath, trying to remain patient. I understand your concerns, but this could be a real opportunity. If I don't at least try, I might regret it later. Ozioma looked down, conflicted. She loved Ekenna and wanted the best for him, but her instincts told her something wasn't right. After a long pause, she finally spoke. Okay, Ekenna, if you really think this is a good opportunity, then I won't stop you. But please be careful. If anything feels wrong, don't hesitate to come back to me. Ekenna smiled, feeling a sense of relief and gratitude. Thank you, Ozioma. I promise I will be careful. That night, as they prepared for bed, Ekenna couldn't stop thinking about the card and Mr. Osita's offer. He knew that accepting the job could be a step towards a better future, but he also understood Ozioma's concerns. He hoped that whatever decision he made would turn out to be the right one for both of them. As he lay in his bed beside Ozioma, he held her hand tightly, feeling her warmth and support. They both knew that their journey was far from over, but they were determined to face whatever came their way together. Months passed, and Ekenna continued his relentless search for a job. He didn't call Mr. Osita for the job all along because Ozioma wasn't comfortable with it. Every morning, he would leave the house with hope in his heart, but every evening, he returned home with disappointment weighing on his shoulders. Despite his efforts, no job opportunities seemed to come his way, and the frustration began to eat away at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was failing Ozioma, the woman who had sacrificed so much to be with him. One evening, After another fruitless day of job hunting, Ekenna sat on the edge of the bed, holding Mr. Osita's business card in his hand. He had kept it tucked away in his wallet all this time, unsure if he should reach out to the man. But now, with no job in sight and bills piling up, the card seemed to burn a hole in his pocket. Ekenna knew he needed to do something, anything, to change their situation. With a deep breath, Ekenna finally made the decision. He picked up his phone and dialed the number on the card. The phone rang a few minutes before a familiar voice answered. Hello. Mr. Osita's voice was smooth, almost too smooth. Ekenna cleared his throat, feeling a bit nervous. Good evening, sir. This is Ekenna. I am the man you gave your card a few months ago. There was a pause on the other end before Mr. Osita spoke again, his tone suddenly warm and welcoming. Ah, Ekenna, yes, I remember you. I've been expecting your call. Ekenna felt a small surge of hope. Maybe this was it. The break he had been waiting for. I'm calling to see if the job opportunity you mentioned is still available. But instead of responding to his question, Mr. Osita said something that made Ekenna's heart skip a beat. How is your wife doing? I remember she was with you that evening when we met. Ekenna was taken aback, his hope quickly turning into confusion. My wife? She's fine, sir, but I thought we were going to discuss the job. Mr. Osita chuckled slightly, but there was something unsettling about the sound. Yes, yes, of course. But your wife, she's such a beautiful woman. I couldn't stop thinking about her after that evening. A cold feeling crept up Ekenna's spine. This conversation was not going the way he had expected. Sir, I called because you said you might have a job for me, Ekenna said, his voice growing tense. There was a brief silence before Mr. Osita responded, his tone still calm, with a hint of something darker. I'm sorry, Ekenna, but I don't have any job for you. What I really want is your wife. Ekenna felt a surge of anger boiling up inside him. His hands clenched into fists, and he could barely believe what he was hearing. Is there something wrong with you? How dare you say something like that to me? But Mr. Osita didn't seem fazed by Ekenna's outburst. In fact, he sounded amused. Now, no need to shout. I have a proposal for you. If you agree to give me your wife, I will pay you 5 million naira. Ekenna was stunned. His mind was reeling from the absurdity and audacity of the offer. He struggled to find his words, but when he did, they came out with a mixture of disbelief and fury. So you think you can buy my wife or my conscience for just 5 million naira? I'm not interested, Mr. Osita. On the other end of the line, Ekenna could hear Mr. Osita chuckling again. Have you ever touched 5 million naira in your entire life, Ekenna? I can make it 10 million if that's what it takes. Ekenna's mind was spinning. 10 million naira. It was more money than he had ever seen in his life. But the price, what Mr. Osita was asking of him, was unthinkable. He was ready to hang up the phone and put an end to this madness. But then, Mr. Osita's voice interrupted his thoughts. If you are ready, call me. If you are not, then don't bother contacting me again. With that, the call ended, leaving Ekenna standing there in stunned silence. He stared at the phone in his hand, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. How could someone be so bold, so heartless to make such an offer? And yet, as much as Ekenna wanted to reject it outright, the temptation of the money lingered in his thoughts like a dark cloud. That evening, Ozioma noticed that something was wrong. As they sat down to dinner, she couldn't help but see the troubled expression on Ekenna's face. He was unusually quiet, barely touching his food. My love, is everything okay? She asked gently, reaching out to touch his hand. Ekenna forced a smile and nodded, not wanting to worry her. Everything is fine, my love. Just a bit tired from the day. But as the days went by, Ozioma noticed a change in her husband. He seemed distant, lost in thoughts more often than not. He would often sit in silence, staring off into space as if battling with something deep inside. She could tell that whatever it was weighing heavily on him, but whenever she asked, he would brush it off, telling her not to worry. Ekenna was indeed battling with his conscience. The offer from Mr. Osita was like a poison, slowly seeping into his mind and clouding his judgment. On one hand, he knew it was wrong, completely and utterly wrong, to even consider such a thing. But on the other hand, the thought of 10 million naira was hard to ignore. It could change their lives, pulling them out of poverty and giving them a fresh start. The more he thought about it, the more it gnawed at him, wearing him down, his resistance bit by bit. Finally, the internal struggle became too much to bear. Ekenna made a decision, one that he knew would haunt him forever. One evening, when Ozioma was out of the house, he picked up his phone and dialed Mr. Osita's number. "Hello, Mr. Osita," Ekenna said, his voice trembling slightly. "Ah, Ekenna, I was wondering if I would hear from you again," Mr. Osita replied, his tone laced with satisfaction. Ekenna took a deep breath, his hands shaking as he spoke. Um, I'm ready, but I need some time to convince my wife." There was a brief pause before Mr. Osita responded. "Take your time, Ekenna. I'm glad you made the right choice. And to show you I'm serious, I'm transferring 5 million naira to your account right away. When you bring her to me, I will give you the rest." Ekenna felt a cold chill run down his spine as he heard the words. The line went silent after that. But the damage was done. He had crossed a line he never thought he would, and there was no turning back. Later that night, Ozioma returned home finding Ekenna sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the floor. She noticed the tension in his posture, the way his hands were clenched tightly together. "Honey, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice full of concern. Ekenna quickly composed himself, forcing another smile. "Nothing, Ozioma. Everything is fine." But as the days passed, his internal struggle only deepened. The weight of his decision bore down on him, and he found it harder and harder to look Ozioma into the eyes. The money was in his account, a constant reminder of the deal he had made with the devil. Ekenna decided it was time to take the next step in the plan he had made with Mr. Osita. The days had been heavy with guilt, but Ekenna tried to shake off the feeling as he picked up his phone and called his wife Ozioma. "Honey, dress up. I'm taking you out today," Ekenna said, trying to sound cheerful, though his heart was pounding in his chest. Ozioma was surprised. They hadn't gone out in a long time because of their financial struggles. So the idea of a day out felt unusual. "Are you serious, my love? Where are we going?" Ekenna hesitated for a moment before replying. "I want to take you to where I just got a job. I think you will like it." Ozioma's eyes widened with excitement. "You got a job? Oh, Ekenna, that's a wonderful news. I'm so happy for you." Ekenna forced a smile. "Yes, it is. Let's go and celebrate." As they got ready, Ekenna tried to keep his mind focused on the moment, blocking out the dark thoughts that threatened to surface. He hadn't touched the money Mr. Osita had sent yet. He didn't even feel like it was his to spend, but today he needed to play the part. On their way, Ekenna and Ozioma trekked to a particular eatery. Ozioma looked at him surprised. "We are eating here?" "Yes, we deserve a treat," Ekenna said, trying to sound confident. They walked inside, and Ekenna ordered a full meal for both of them. The table was filled with food, more than they had eaten in a long time. As they ate, Ozioma couldn't help but feel curious. This is all so sudden, Ekenna. How did you get the money to pay for all of this? She asked, looking at him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Ekenna swallowed hard before answering. My new boss gave me some cash in advance. He wanted me to get new clothes for work, but I thought we should celebrate first. Ozioma beamed with happiness. You are so thoughtful, Ekenna. I'm really proud of you. Ekenna nodded, but the guilt gnawed at him like a hungry beast. After they finished eating, they left the restaurant and continued their journey. As they walked together, his mind racing as he got closer to Mr. Osita's house. When they arrived, Ozioma looked around and asked Ekenna where exactly this place was. Mr. Osita's place, said Ekenna, and Ozioma now asked again, what are they doing here? Ekenna's hands were trembling already. He looked at Ozioma, trying to hide the fear in his eyes. It's part of the job, Ozioma. Just trust me. Ozioma nodded, though she was still puzzled. As they approached the entrance, they were met by a group of stern-looking security guards. The house was big, with tall fences and security cameras everywhere. It felt more like a fortress than a home, and Ozioma couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As they entered the grand living room, Mr. Osita appeared, smiling warmly. Oh, Ekenna, you finally made it, and you brought your lovely wife. Ozioma, unaware of the dark deal between her husband and Mr. Osita, smiled politely. Thank you, sir, for giving my husband a job. We really appreciate it. But then, Mr. Osita turned to Ekenna with a sly grin. So, Ekenna, you didn't tell her, did you? The room fell silent. Ozioma looked at Ekenna, her smile fading. Tell me what? Ekenna, what's going on? Ekenna's heart pounded in his chest. He could feel the walls closing in on him and the words caught in his throat. Before he could speak, Mr. Osita stepped forward, his voice cold and sharp. Well, Ozioma, I own you now, he said, looking directly at her. Your darling husband sold you to me for 10 million naira. The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. Ozioma's eyes widened in shock and she slowly turned to face Ekenna. What did he say? Ekenna, is this true? Ekenna looked down at the floor, unable to meet her gaze. He felt ashamed, trapped by his own actions. Ozioma, I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I thought I could come back for you. Tears welled up in Ozioma's eyes as she stared at the man she had once loved with all her heart. After everything we have been through, this is how you repay me. Do you remember how I chose you over my family, Ekenna? And now, you have sold me like some kind of property. Ekenna's shoulders slumped, and he could barely find the words to respond. I'm sorry. I thought it was the only way out. Don't worry, Ozioma. I will work hard and come back for you. But Ozioma could see through his hollow promises. She felt a deep sense of betrayal, like a knife that had been plunked into her heart. The man she had trusted, the man she had sacrificed so much for, he had handed her over to another man for money. As she stood there, tears streaming down her face, something shifted inside her. The pain turned into a cold resolve. If Ekenna had the heart to sell her, then he wasn't the man she thought he was. She would have to teach him a lesson he would never forget. She turned to Mr. Osita, her voice steady despite the tears. Where is my room? Mr. Osita was taken aback. He had expected resistance, a fight, anything but this calm acceptance. Your room? He echoed, surprised. Yes, my room. Ozioma repeated, her voice firm. You bought me, didn't you? So, where is my room? Mr. Osita's surprise turned into a smile. He liked a challenge, and Ozioma's unexpected reaction intrigued him. Follow me, he said, signaling to one of his servants. Take her to the guest room. As Ozioma followed the servant, her heart was heavy with sadness, but her mind was set on a plan. If Ekenna thought he could get away with this, he was sorely mistaken. She would play along, but she had no intention of letting him off the hook so easily. Before Ekenna left, Mr. Osita asked him to confirm the balance of 5 million naira he sent. Tears welled up in his eyes as he shamefully left the house. The next day, Ekenna found himself standing in front of Mr. Osita's grand mansion. His heart pounded in his chest as he thought about what he had done. Desperation had led him to this point, but now all he could feel was regret. He needed to see Ozioma, to beg her for forgiveness, and somehow make things right. He knocked on the large wooden door, and after a few moments it opened. A stern-looking guard stood before him, eyeing him with suspicion. I need to see Mr. Osita, Ekenna said, his voice trembling. The guard raised an eyebrow but stepped aside, allowing him to enter. Ekenna was led through the same grand halls Ozioma had walked just the day before. The opulence of the house only made Ekenna feel smaller, more insignificant. Finally, he was brought before Mr. Osita, who sat in a luxurious armchair in a large living room. Ozioma was nowhere to be seen. Ekenna fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. Please, Mr. Osita, I beg you, let me have my wife back. I will return the money you gave me. I just want her back. Mr. Osita looked down at Ekenna with cold eyes. There is no refund, he said simply. You made a deal and it cannot be undone. Ekenna's heart sank. Please, I will do anything. Just take the money and let her go. She's my wife. Osita's expression remained unchanged. Your wife? He said, his voice filled with disdain. You sold her to me for 10 million naira. What kind of a husband does that? Ekenna's shoulders slumped as he realized the gravity of his actions. He had let his greed and desperation cloud his judgment, and now he was paying the price. Get out, Osita said, his voice firm, and don't ever come back. Ekenna looked up in shock, but Osita motioned to the guards, and they grabbed Ekenna by the arms, dragging him out of the mansion. He struggled, but it was no use. They tossed him out onto the street, and he landed hard on the ground. He lay there for a moment, staring up at the sky. Tears blurred his vision. His world had crumbled around him, and he didn't know how to pick up his pieces. As he slowly got to his feet, he looked back at the mansion, his heart filled with regret. He had lost everything: his wife, his dignity, and even his self-respect. The 10 million naira he had received now felt like a curse. He was too afraid to touch it, knowing it had cost him the most important person in his life. Meanwhile, inside the mansion, Ozioma sat in her room, unaware of the scene that had just unfolded outside. He had spent the day trying to make sense of her new reality. She couldn't bring herself to hate Osita, even though he had been part of this twisted deal. After all, he hadn't forced her to do anything against her will. That evening, Ozioma finally gathered the courage to leave her room and go downstairs. She found Osita sitting in the living room sipping a glass of wine. He looked up as she entered. Good morning, Mr. Osita. Ozioma greeted him quietly. Good morning, Ozioma, Osita replied, setting down his glass. Please have a seat. Ozioma sat down on the edge of a plush chair, feeling awkward and out of place. I wanted to talk to you, Osita began, about what happened. Ozioma looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of emotions. Why did you do it? She asked, her voice trembling. Why did you buy me from Ekenna? Osita sighed, running a hand through his hair. I will be honest with you, Ozioma. At first, it was just a game. Your husband came to me desperate for a job, and I saw an opportunity, but I didn't realize how much pain it would cause you. I just wanted to test him and see the kind of a man he is. Ozioma's eyes filled with tears. You are no different from him, you know, she said. You gave him the money to buy me, like I'm some kind of object. How could you do that? Osita looked genuinely remorseful. You are right, he admitted. I'm not proud of what I did, but I want you to know that I have never forced you to do anything against your will. You are free to stay here as long as you want. Or, if you choose to go back to Ekenna, that's your decision. Ozioma shook her head firmly. I'm not going back, she said. I don't want to see him again. I can't forgive him for what he did. Osita nodded, understanding the pain in her voice. Then you can stay here, and I will make sure you are taken care of. Ozioma felt a wave of relief wash over her. For the first time since she had arrived, she didn't feel like a prisoner. She was still hot, still angry, but at least she had some control over her life. Thank you, she said quietly. Osita smiled gently. You don't need to thank me, Ozioma. You deserve better than what he gave you. As the evening turned into night, Ozioma began to feel a small sense of peace. She didn't know what the future held, but she was determined to make the best of her situation. She had been through so much, but she wasn't going to let it break her. In the days that followed, Ozioma slowly began to adjust to her new life in Mr. Osita's mansion. True to his words, Osita never forced her to do anything she didn't want to do. Instead, he treated her with respect and kindness, which was more than she had ever expected from him. One morning, as Ozioma was sitting in the garden enjoying the warm sunlight, Osita approached her with a thoughtful expression on his face. Ozioma, he began, I have been thinking, you are an intelligent woman, and it's clear you are capable of much more than just staying here in this house. How would you feel about working in my company? Ozioma looked at him in surprise. Your company? Osita nodded. Yes, I have a few businesses, and I could use someone with your skills. You would be paid a good salary, and it would give you something to focus on. Ozioma hesitated. The idea of working again intrigued her, but she was also nervous about stepping into a new role. I don't know, she said softly. What if I'm not good enough? Osita smiled reassuringly. You'll be fine, Ozioma. I believe in you. Besides, you won't be alone. I will make sure you have all the support you need. Ozioma thought about it for a moment, then nodded. All right, she said. I will give it a try. Osita's smile widened. That's the spirit. We'll start tomorrow. And so, the next day, Ozioma began working at Osita's company. At first, it was challenging. She had to learn new things and adapt to a different environment. Osita was patient with her. He guided her through the process, and slowly but surely, Ozioma gained confidence in her abilities. As the weeks passed, Ozioma started to feel more at home in her new life. She began to enjoy her work, and the salary Osita paid her allowed her to buy new clothes and take care of herself. She no longer felt like a victim of her own circumstances. She was taking control of her life. Meanwhile, Ekenna continued to come to Osita's mansion begging for another chance, but no one paid him any attention. The guard had strict orders not to let him in, and eventually Ekenna gave up. He started to move on and start a new life with the money he had received. But without Ozioma, the money didn't bring him happiness. He squandered it on frivolous things, and before long it was all gone. Ekenna disappeared from everyone's lives, a shadow of the man he once was. Back at the mansion, Ozioma's relationship with Osita continued to grow. They spent more time together, sharing meals and talking about everything from work to life. Ozioma found herself looking forward to their conversations, and she began to see a different side of Osita. He wasn't the heartless man she had thought he was. He was kind, thoughtful, and genuinely cared about her well-being. One evening, as they were sitting in the garden, Osita looked at Ozioma with a serious expression. Ozioma, he said quietly, I need to tell you something. Ozioma turned to him, curious. What is it? Osita hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. I have grown very fond of you, he admitted. I know this started in a terrible way, and I'm sorry for that, but I've come to care about you deeply. Ozioma's heart skipped a beat. She had felt something growing between them, but she hadn't expected Osita to say it out loud. I care about you too, Osita, she said softly. As time passed by, Ozioma and Osita's relationship had grown stronger over time. What started as a friendship had blossomed into love, and everyone around them could see how happy they were together. Osita admired Ozioma's strength and resilience, while Ozioma appreciated Osita's kindness and understanding. One sunny afternoon, Osita decided it was time to take their relationship to the next level. He planned a special day for Ozioma, one that she would never forget. Osita took her to a beautiful garden filled with colorful flowers, where they often went for walks. As they strolled through the garden, Ozema noticed something different about Osita. He seemed a little nervous, which made her curious. Ozioma, Osita began, stopping in front of a large fountain that sparkled in the sunlight. I have something very important to ask you. Ozioma looked at him, her heart beginning to race. What is it, Osita? She asked softly. Osita reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. He opened it to reveal a shining diamond ring. Ozioma, will you marry me? He asked, his voice filled with love and hope. Ozioma gasped, her eyes filling with tears of joy. She had never expected this moment, but it felt so right. Yes, Osita, I will marry you, she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. Osita slipped the ring into her finger, and they both smiled, knowing they were about to start a new chapter in their lives. The preparations for the wedding began immediately. Ozioma and Osita wanted a simple but beautiful ceremony, surrounded by their closest friends and family. The day of the wedding arrived, and the venue was decorated with flowers and lights. Everyone was excited, especially Ozioma, who looked stunning in her white wedding dress. Osita couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked down the aisle toward him. As they stood before the altar, ready to exchange their vows, something unexpected happened. Ekenna, Ozioma's ex-husband, appeared at the entrance of the venue. He looked in and went out, with sadness in his eyes. He stood quietly at the back, watching as Ozioma and Osita promised to love each other forever. I, Osita, take you, Ozioma, to be my wife, Osita said, his voice steady and full of emotions. I promise to love, honor, and cherish you, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, as long as we both shall live. Ozioma smiled through her tears. And I, Ozioma, take you, Osita, to be my husband, she replied. I promise to love, respect, and stand by you through all the joys and challenges that life may bring. As they exchanged rings, Ekenna couldn't hold back his tears. He realized the full extent of his mistakes and how much he had lost. He watched them kiss, sealing their vows, and knew that Ozioma had truly moved on. Quietly, Ekenna turned and left the venue, his heart heavy with regret. The wedding reception was a joyful celebration. Ozioma and Osita danced together, surrounded by the people who loved them. They were finally married, and it felt like a dream come true. A few days after the wedding, Ozioma was driving home from work when she saw someone standing by the side of the road. As she got closer, she recognized Ekenna. He looked worn out and desperate. She stopped the car and rolled down the window. Ekenna, she said, surprised to see him. Ozioma, Ekenna replied, his voice trembling. I've been waiting here, hoping to see you. I need to apologize for everything I did. I was a fool and I have lost everything. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'm truly sorry. Ozioma looked at him, feeling a mix of emotions. She had moved on from the pain he caused, but she could see how much he was suffering. Ekenna, she said gently, I don't hold any grudges against you. I have moved forward with my life, and I'm happy now. You should try to do the same. Tears welled up in Ekenna's eyes. Thank you, Ozioma, he whispered. I wish you all the happiness in the world. Ozioma nodded, giving him a small smile, Take care of yourself, Ekenna, she said before driving away. And she glanced in the rear view mirror. She saw him standing there watching her leave, tears streaming down his face. Time flew by quickly for Ozioma and Osita. Their love grew stronger and they were blessed with two beautiful children, a boy and a girl. They named their son Chinedu and their daughter Adora. Their home was filled with laughter, love, and the joy of a happy family. Ozioma often thought about how much her life had changed since the day she walked through the grand halls of Osita's mansion. She had gone through so much pain, but in the end, she found love and happiness. She was grateful for everything she had and looked forward to the future with hope and excitement. As for Ekenna, he was never heard from again, but Ozioma prayed that he found peace in his life. She knew that holding onto anger wouldn't do anyone any good, so she chose to forgive and let go. And so, Ozioma and Osita lived happily ever after, surrounded by their loving family. They knew that no matter what challenges came their way, they would face them together with love and strength. This story teaches us that the choices we make can change our lives in big ways. Ekenna had a bad choice by selling Ozioma, thinking only about money. But Ozioma, even after being betrayed, found a way to make her life better. The story shows that no matter how tough things get, we should always be honest and kind. It also reminds us that true love and respect are more valuable than money. In the end, Ozioma found happiness because she stayed strong and made the right choices. We should always choose to do good, even when others don't. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Osita and Ekenna on African Stories. If you liked it and felt inspired with their journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.